So this was the only time I could find to actually go ahead and make a response to your video, Vince. So on your topic of the week on whether or not we want to see it painted on the table, I guess I'll go with a few things, or I'll start with what you gave us as a prompt, and then go into a few things I saw from the community that raised or that came up with some opinions for me. So I'll start with the first with my own stuff. Basically, I paint what I want as a hobby, and if I can get over to the game store to play a game or two, I will. But a lot of the stuff that they play over the store are things I'm not interested in painting in the least. So a lot of my I like to paint fantasy stuff, and everybody over there plays 40k, so much of my 40k army isn't painted. So I don't actually have and the other thing with my own painting is, since I like to paint what I want, I may have an army of Sylvaneth in front of me, which I did about 2 months ago, and then suddenly I've switched that, or I've gotten rid of, or I haven't gotten rid of them, but I've stopped painting them because I got interested in painting just a single dwarf warrior, and then I got interested in painting just a single high elf archer, and I got interested into painting or just coming up with a bunch of bases, different looking, and now I'm into just trying to build a skirmish high elf force. So what I like to do, or what I like to do as a hobby is, or in enjoying the hobby painting as a hobby, none of that usually comes into, well, I want to get an army painted for getting onto the table. Most of the time. As far as my opponent's army go, I don't care what their paint job is either. And there's a reason for that, and I'll get into that later on in this video. But whatever their paint job is, as long as I can tell that it's something, or they can tell me, yes, this one's the one with this gun or this weapon, as long as I can distinguish that fact from the get-go, I'm usually okay with it. Although I prefer, if we're going to go deeper into this as far as immersion goes, I prefer they actually have a model on the table and not just a piece of paper that says it's this. That there will break immersion for me instantly. Finally, the third point was tournaments, and I know in the initial response I gave, I came up with a point system of my own. Basically, as far as I can tell, what I've come to as a conclusion and accepted is, if it's a one-day event, I don't think there should be any grounds. It should be okay. If it's a one-day tournament event, you should be okay with it regardless. There's no difference. If it's a grand tournament, something where you go to a big city, you spend a few nights in a hotel to stay there, yeah, you should probably have your army painted. Although, if you don't have your army painted because you're brand new to the hobby, I don't think you should be restrictive on that. If you want to assign a penalty for it, or assign a penalty for people who aren't going to actually paint their army, like a lot of War Mahorts players tend to do, if you're going to assign a penalty, make it 1 or 2 games. Don't allow them to become the, even if they win all of their games, don't allow them to become the best painted army. So, a few of the things I saw were, I fall into the camp, so, a few of the things I saw, you gave a story on how people would come up to the table that they were at, or that you were playing at, and they would see the painted models, and they would, you gave the story that they would usually ask you, well, how did you paint it, and get a little bit more interested in the hobby. Skavenese came up with it where if you didn't have your army painted, they wouldn't come up to you at all, or that was the opinion I kind of got from him. And that's probably not true, but they get more involved if you had a fully painted army. And what I've seen is that if you have a fully painted army on the table, or even a partially painted army, a lot of people are already of the opinion that having to paint your army is going to be a hassle and a chore, and it's not going to be fun anyway. So a lot of people will pass on the hobby just for that reason. As such, I feel a lot of personally, I think a lot of that probably comes from the stigma that a lot of people are saying, well, if you don't have a painted army, get the fuck out of our hobby. which I think is probably the reason why our hobby is dying as a whole. Or our hobby was dying for a long while, and probably is why it doesn't grow as fast as a lot of the other hobbies like tabletop game or like board games have been growing recently. The second one, a lot of people mention, well, if your army isn't painted, it breaks immersion for me. And I say, okay, yes, I can understand that. The same way as, if I see a token, it breaks immersion. However, for myself, and the reason why I've gone, just go ahead, put whatever, I'm okay with my opponent putting any model out on the table, is that a bad paint job will break immersion for me as well. And I've got somebody that I've played regularly against that they don't have a great paint job. It looks like they took two cans, or they took a can of spray paint and then they, slathered a bunch of stuff on it to make it look like it's 2 or 3 different colors. And that's not a great paint job, but it's not it's not too horrible. For me, the parts that throw me off usually on immersion for bad paint jobs are, it involves the old coloring book of painting in between the lines. And anytime I've noticed where, okay, you've got a gray ship or a gray Space Wolf ship and there's a gold medallion on it and you painted that gold, but then you've sprayed gold or splashed gold onto the gray part, that's where it breaks immersion for me. And also because you didn't even do the thing you should do, which is to touch up the gold or the gray on the outside. I can get it for little details, but those are usually not seeable enough. But bad paint jobs like that, or bad painting like that, breaks immersion for me. So I don't feel like that's a good enough, or that saying it breaks immersion for you is not something. If it breaks immersion for you enough, I don't understand why you're not trying to paint that person's army for them. Finally, it's a bit. I liked Ant's video mostly because it had an opinion that I disagreed with a lot, but I can still respect him for having the opinion. A lot of what he said was that nobody gives awards for hobby, and people give awards for winning tournaments, which I disagree with entirely, mostly because I cannot name a single person that's won a tournament and done very well at that. You could probably come up with a number of names, but the number of people I listen to, or at least hear from, if they are telling you about how they won a tournament, it's because they finally finished first for once, or they got like a respectable 5th or something like that. They didn't win the whole competition, and they're not priding themselves on winning the competition. And a lot of the people I listen to, if I know their name personally, or if I've heard their name before, and examples would be Dave Witek, Garage Hammer, Tyler Mangle. It's from their involvement in the hobby. It's not, or what they've done for the hobby, how they talk or how they provide videos and content for the hobby on a daily basis. Or yourself, that's another good one. It's what they do for the hobby. It's never what they won. If we're talking about something because they finally finished first in a tournament, we're talking about the army as a whole. We're finally talking that, the Bloodletter Bomb, or the Stormcast are ruling the tournament roost, or 100 Skyfires are winning the tournament. We're not talking about it in this guy finished first place because he's got the best looking army or whatnot. So, and of course, like what Ann said, that thing will change. Skyfires may be the creme de la creme right now, but in a day or two, they're not going to be worth, they may be the bottom feeder. So, hopefully, I guess the other part, as far as why we don't care too much about, or why tournament, having the best looking army at a tournament I don't think it should be given no props. I feel like if there's tiebreaker points, it deserves tiebreaker points, but the reason I think it doesn't deserve, the merit that it gets is that as far as games go, we know that if you go there, or if you go to a tournament and you win all 5 of your games, we know you actually played the games because you were present at the table making the decisions. But if you have the best painted army, I don't necessarily know if you actually put. We're giving a big discount to you didn't actually just spend a bunch of money to get somebody who's really, really, really good at painting to go paint it for you. And really, if you're at the point where you're saying, or really the part of the hobby that we're saying, well, we can't trust these guys because, and we make all these things of we can't trust these competitive players because they're only playing what everybody else is playing that they know is done well. I think the same thing goes for as far as hobby goes, especially at tournaments. That we can't really put these guys on a pedestal because we don't actually know if they actually painted the army or not, or if they or if they just paid $1,000 to the local guy who does a lot of paint real well, or does painting real well. So, and not only so there's that, and the other thing as far as Ant's opinion goes is that hobby's really subjective as to what we see as good and what we see as bad. And I know that's one of the biggest hurdles I've got from painting for having a painted army on the table for myself. I've yet to look at a model and really see through to its full completion. Or I know that there's stuff I need to do a little bit better, or to make it look a little bit better than that. So I've never seen a model through to its full completion, or I've never seen a model through to its full completion where I'm like, yes, this is perfect, I'm fine with it. Which, that's something that painters and hobbyists have always said, well, that's doing hobby right. So hopefully I've ranted on for long enough. I think about coming up on 12 minutes. If you have your own opinion, or if you're not Vince, if you've heard this video or heard the comments through this video, if you've got your own opinion you disagree with me on, by all means, go ahead and share it. I'll try to make it do and put up a good a good response for you. Thanks.